So I'm Bonnie Buckner, and I'm project director for Imagine Communities. It is cursed. Maybe not. Maybe it is. And I also teach at a Media Psychology and Social Change graduate program. It's a partnership with UCLA and with Fielding Graduate University. My partner on Imagine Communities is Dr. Gary Hare, and he's also going to speak with me here. He's the director of the Media Psychology program. And what we're interested in, what we're here to talk about today, is using immersive media, immersive technologies for social impact. And like many of the speakers that came before us today, we think that what technology is doing today, it's enabling people to create change, and it's creating a change in people themselves. All of us here have a different idea of the promise of immersive technologies. Our idea of that is personal empowerment. And we think that personal empowerment leads to social change, and social change in a large-scale way. So bear with us for a moment for just a tiny bit of psychology. But basically, today we have people who can send a message that's read by hundreds and thousands of other people. We have people who have the tools to bring their imagination to reality. And this creates people who become much more engaged in what their world is, online, offline. And they become people who understand that what they do matters. So, as Jody was talking about earlier, we think that part of the promise of immersive technologies is that ability to get involved in your community. And you get involved in the community by technology disappearing, which is something that Fred talked about as well. People today, they want to move from that square of the computer out into their social world offline, and then back to that social world offline again. So it's moving from the thrill of the technology to what the technology enables them to do. We've taken these concepts and we've moved them to education. So Imagine Communities is a design-based educational experience that brings students into their communities in a way that brings the communities back to the students and re-envisions and rebuilds their world. I'll give you the brief, and then Gary is going to talk about some specifics. Imagine Communities is a 24-month project where students begin by building a virtual 3D version of their community. They enrich that community with stories, with narratives from the neighborhood, sounds from the neighborhood, and they put that both in the virtual world, but they also, through AR, make walking tours of their neighborhoods that people from the community can interact with and get those stories. Then the students look at areas of need in their neighborhoods. So maybe there's an abandoned lot, there's a blighted parkway, and they reimagine those areas. So maybe they see a community garden, maybe they see a basketball court, and they build that out in the virtual world, and again, through AR, that becomes accessible to the community to see. The community then votes on that best design, and the students are then enabled to realize that design in the real world. So for us, having this design-based technology, we happen to think it's a way to fundamentally change cognitive education because it empowers the student. It empowers the student to be able to work with the tools of their imagination and to see it realized. And it also brings the student into their community and makes them agents of change in their own communities. It brings them into a participatory place in the world that they live in. And synthesizing these different skill sets and being able to look at big picture things and affect change is something that we think is necessary for the world that we're living in today. And so for us, the promise of immersive technologies and the promise of our project is to develop these aspects in students. And now Gary's going to talk a little bit about specifics to that.
Yeah, good morning. I spent about 2 decades or so in interactive media and then stumbled into academia and been looking for a major application for a long, long time. Bonnie, Pam, Rutledge, and I started about a year ago asking the question, what would happen if you could put design tools in the hands of high school kids? And does it matter whether these high school kids are from really the world's crappiest high schools or the most privileged? Is there some sort of equality when you start putting these tools in kids' hands? And we're almost taking a page from Jody's talk this morning, where she's talking about Daniel Pink. And if you read his book, we kind of ripped off 3 or 4 chapters out of it in thinking about this. So what we're doing is partnering with foundations and with school districts and with a few charter schools. And basically, starting with geospatial information, maps from people like Google and ESRI, the kids map their neighborhood, 16 square blocks. They then build that neighborhood in 3D. And once they built the neighborhood, they can start to alter it. Imagine learning a paint program by redesigning and repainting your own house. They then can start to change things within those neighborhoods. Like Bonnie said, a blighted lot could become a basketball court. A rundown store could become a new one. They start to plan the neighborhood. And then using AR, they can do walkthroughs the way they see their world. They can interview their grandparents and tell stories about their house. They can upload old photographs. They bring this neighborhood alive. And to be honest, the biggest problem we run into, where's the clicker, Bonnie? Is we can't find the clicker. What some of you guys might want to work on is a virtual clicker, because it'd be a very cool thing to have. And so this neighborhood comes alive and they change it. And one of the biggest problems we run into is that we had very specific educational outcomes for this project. So we wanted the kids to learn math and science and physics and perspective, storytelling, interviewing, all this kind of stuff. And the tools are getting too good in some cases to learn much. So some of Google's 3D tools in SketchUp are so powerful, you can just use, a kid can use it in a day without learning a lot of this stuff. And we're starting to looking at dumbing down a few things that we're asking them to do so that more learning can take place. Here you see a view of one of the kids, and so what she's going to do is she's actually, you can see this whole project, by the way, and full explanation of it at imaginecommunities.org. And so what these kids are doing is they're figuring out ways to tell stories. Interestingly enough, in the first application for this, the first question we got from the bureaucratic agency was, can the mayor of this city be the first person to take people through a walkthrough? And Bonnie deals in politics, so she said, well, of course. So mayors are kids too. I designed this a long, long time ago. It's a walkthrough of the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. And one of the things we did that was most compelling, and you guys will look at this now and say that's very, very, very simple, and it is. And it was, at the time, Intel thought it was cool, so they gave us a lot of money. But one of the things we did in this project, and we learned a lot from it, is in Van Gogh's picture of the Blue Room, his famous bedroom. You could actually walk into the photograph, walk around the furniture, sit on the bed, and move chairs around and stuff. Van Gogh would have hated it, but the user loved it. So we started to learn about the importance of manipulability. And so we try to make this environment that we're working on entirely manipulable. This is a big program, 24 months. We've got built into this 17 4-day workshops for the kids, lots and lots and lots of hands-on. It's expensive. And so it's not exactly the kind of thing that everybody's going to run out the door and say, gee, we'd like one of those too. But recently a foundation came to us and said, we're interested in immersive information. And it got to be a pretty cool project, and we're just starting on it. There's nothing on our site right now. There will be quite soon. There's a tremendous amount of middle school kids and high school kids that are being taught how to test water. So they test the water at their local beach, at the river, and that kind of stuff, right? So there's this foundation called the Gulf Foundation, and they've taught kids on both sides of the Rio Grande, Texas and Mexico, to test the quality of the water. And they've got a lot of data on this. And they said, can we figure out how to put the data on the website? You go, well, yeah, that'd be simple enough. But wouldn't it be cool if you could walk over to the body of water, point your smartphone at it and gives you real-time testing data on the quality of the water where you're standing right now. And it's very simple to do, so we're working on this right now. You know who hates this idea, by the way? San Diego County. Some of the worst quality water in the Pacific Ocean in America, and a huge tourism business. So we're starting to talk with the Surfrider Foundation about making this data available any body of water. You can just walk to your local beach, point your camera at it, and say, holy shit, I'm not going surfing today. And so we've been looking at the whole idea of this social advocacy and the really power of real-time information without editorial. If those of us that live in California, maybe most of us, one of the most sensitive issues forever, and it will be forever and ever and ever, is the use of water and the misuse of water. Imagine you drove up the central coast of California. I'm working on this right now, by the way. And you can point your camera phone at any crop, and it shows how many acre-feet of water it takes to grow that crop. And you start asking yourself some questions. Why in the world do we grow rice in the middle of a desert? And then you can answer them and say, how much money have the rice growers given to which politicians to get water subsidy? Yes, that could be on your smartphone as well. So we're real interested in immersing this media for education, hopefully to bring kids in a more interesting way to get educated. And then we're even more interested in the political troublemaking aspects of AR. And that's really what we're trying to be all about. And are we early? So we get extra credit because Bonnie and I ended early, and we have one more slide. And so Pam's not here today, so Pam's been working with this as well. And you'll notice that, and maybe this was accidental on our part, it is very, very, very much a blend of immersive media, geospatial information mapping, and augmented reality. And we're trying to teach ourselves, and maybe others, to think like that so that there's simple ways of bringing these things together. I really like the idea of the previous speaker talking about there and place and the importance of being able to move through place. We have a lot of people looking at the social aspects of the use of media, and we're always troubled by the distancing of people because of their devices. You know, seeing a guy on a date with an attractive woman, both of whom are texting on their cell phones across the table, I don't think is long-term good for population growth in society. Thank you.
Very good. Very good.